Pues entonces, estos 2 años estoy haciendo un multi-site fieldwork. Maybe I should do it in English. I've already prepared in English. Okay. From in Copenhagen and Barcelona. There's actually a third place, but that would be another study. But I would like to continue there, and that would be in Poland. I will come back to that. The focus, that's actually I'm tracing these warehouses, or rather where the people actually come from who works in these warehouses, and they are usually migrants, though not all of them. Here I'm quite inspired by the graph or the work with Jose Luis and Uwe and Miranda, all the personal network. That's the new thing that I'm kind of putting into my own research. I'm also doing it my former research, but that will be another presentation. The theoretical framework, well, I mean, one which is pretty clear for me now, it will have to be something about algorithm management, which is a term. I mean, there's quite a few that's writing about that, so it's not kind of a new thing, but I will kind of lean back on that and kind of discuss my material from that. I'll come back to what that actually, or why I will draw on these studies. And the other one, obviously about migrant studies, but it's a huge field of it, but I'll somehow have to deal with the digital loneliness and political helplessness of these people that I've met. There's different ways to follow what I'm doing now. I could follow the money, and I'm also hardly doing it. It's not the main thing, but there's a neoliberal economy. You'll see the next map going on. I mean, people are moving, products are moving all over the world. It's an international company, I'm sorry, who's outsourcing a lot of the jobs to other companies. So it's quite complicated, the economical part. I also work with crime and all this, and there's, I mean, you follow the money there if you really want to get to know what's going on in this underground world. So there's some a bit more hidden world. It's a very hidden world, actually. I never had more bigger problems. I've studied crime and many things, but as you will see, this is actually not easy to get access to. You can also follow the product. There's this one for book flip-flop. Some of you might know it, where you basically follow the flip-flop. I mean, there are 1 billion of them in the world. I mean, there are people using them in the world. They have a production line, so you follow the product here. It's plastic. Who produced the plastic? There's some in China, other things in Ethiopia. So there's a whole line here. Theoretically, it's also more advanced in a certain sense. I draw on Tim Engel, more on the kind of making. So you're not reducing migration to a flow. It's the whole these also Bruno Latour. So it's a kind of an advanced way of looking at how the products move. And you can follow the labor, which is what I do here. We look at Europe and my places of interest. You can say these are the naves of the warehouses. There's one here in Poland. This is the mother warehouse in Copenhagen. That's where I have many field work. There's another one here in Barcelona, actually on the outskirts in the Seminario. And there's another one here in this part of Poland, which takes care of the internet trade. These basically make pallets and send out to the shops. I'm not going to say what's the name of this company, but you probably know it because that's not the point really. But I can bring out all the names of who they outsource it to and who I'm working with right now. Anyhow, the products comes from China and India. And here in Spain, they send them out to Portugal, Spain, France, Italy. China and India also, they sail it in. I mean, it's shipping and into Copenhagen. They send it out to the rest of Central, Eastern Europe and Northern Europe. There's also a little place in England since the Brexit. I'm not really interested in that now, but I could also draw on that one. That's actually one I forgot to put in this map. And then, I mean, in Poland, they basically provide to all of Europe. but on internet base. So it's kind of different. The other ones just send the whole pallets to the shops. But here's my interest: is where do the migrant workers actually come from? Said that there are also Danes working here, and I mean the Catalan and the Spanish people working here. So it's not like it's only migrants, but it's going that way. In Denmark, it would be like 2/3, and those on temporary contracts would be the migrants. So it's getting more and more. But anyhow, the Ukrainians work in Poland. The Polish and Eastern European people go to Denmark. Basically knows Polish. So you can say the Polish go to Denmark to work, while the same plant in Poland, they come from Ukraine. Here it's more from Africa and from Latin America. So I kind of I follow these people just to find out what do they make up of their life in these modern companies. There's also another thing to it. It's what draw labor now. I mean, internet trade, all these big international companies. It's if you try to drive around on the outskirts of Barcelona and Tarragona, you will see these huge warehouses. So where before were probably industrial complexes, it's all warehouses, and they need a lot of manual labor. So what kind of lives do they kind of get? How do they get here? How is classic questions. But I also have an idea that things have changed a little with these warehouses, that there's a kind of a mobility going on in Europe that wasn't here before. But even though, I mean, for instance, the Africans that works up from Northern Africa and South Sahara also that works in Denmark, they have usually been bypassing Spain. Because here you can stay 3 years and then you can actually get a permanent residency. You don't get that in Denmark. And this is then a bit what I already have explained. Very quickly, Copenhagen. Here you see what kind of work environment it is. There's different kind of jobs for those who get into this. They're basically highly educated. I think they probably have like between 12 and 15 years of education, most of the people working these places, which is something that surprised me. You can either stand here. Here they have Steger cranes in Copenhagen. So basically, it's robots and cranes that bring the pallets coming from China into a place, and then they bring them out again. And there's also robots kind of taking the package down, and they bring all whatever shop have ordered down here. But robots can't do yet. Probably never will put. Because it's kind of some of the most difficult things for robots to do is to make the pallet. And for that, they need a lot of people. The other one is, it's a older system. That's the one that I have here in Barcelona. It's also taken from Denmark because you have to do manual picking. And here you have a headphone, and the computer actually tells you where to go, what to pick, when to pack it. So your boss is directly a computer. And here you can see it's gone pick by voice, it's called. And the other one is all a computer tells you. So there are different ways, but basically you don't have somebody really telling you what to do. So the middle management is now given to an algorithm. Really. All these places, it's not new either, but they work with this philosophy called lean, making you slimmer. So the whole company has to kind of slim up. So all these warehouses, they don't store much. It's kind of, they just make flow very quickly. That was a big problem with the COVID because they actually hadn't got much stored when all the transport stopped. So many of these, including this company, they ran out of stock very quickly. But this kind of management require more than anything standardization of everything. So you have to do exactly the same because people move in, people move out. How to learn everybody what to do. If it's standardized, it's much quicker. Sorry. I'll just take something to drink. part of this also is based on performance schemes. So if you think that we are first in academia, well, this is nothing compared to here. Every day you see how much you pack the day before, how many packets, and the one who's packing less will not get extended. I mean, that's so simple as that. They don't say it directly. Here you see, I mean, this is just at a certain time this day. Usually you pick like 2,000 boxes a day. It's like 10 tons. And you can see some are doing like 1/5 of those running up front. And you see it all the time when you're working there, so you kind of can get excited and find out that now I better work there. Here's me up in the top. It's very efficient. I saw when they actually implied this, everybody started to work like 30% or more. I mean, the productivity raised by 30%. So these warehouses are also in fact with other warehouses because it's all outsourced. So those who don't do it, they will lose this. So I mean, they're all part of the same system. Our boss, as he said, he will be fired if he doesn't do it, because then he's not as productive as he's supposed to be. But it also has another thing that the leaders kind of, I mean, people at the floor, those I work with, they say leaders are lazy. We become the bad guys between us because we kind of have to yell at each other, tell people when they are cheating, because you can cheat with this. I mean, instead of, you're not measuring everything, that's a problem. You can never standardize totally. So if you help a friend, just telling him what to do, if he made a mistake, well, your productivity will fall. And this was actually right. If you don't put the cartoon, the waste in the right spot, but you just leave it there, somebody has to do it for you. And there are hundreds of those small things, and I've seen people actually get into very strong fights. They had to call the police just because of things like this. It's a stressful way to manage. I mean, here they pick wrong, so that thing has to be straightened out, and there are many ways. But anyhow. So what do people think about this? Because it is actually computers kind of ordering us around. Anyhow, nobody really thinks that. They think there's people behind. So conspiracy really flourishes in this area. So everybody thinks that these sitting there with the computers, they're actually looking how to play a game with us. Many of them are also gamers. That's another thing. But it's kind of, okay, now he's in front, I give him a more difficult order, because it also depends, your productivity depends on the order you have. So if you get a more difficult one, you will have to work harder to stay in front. Or if you're behind, you might. So they will always get this kind of play going on with the people working on the floor. And like this one, he said, I mean, I don't buy that. Tell me why the women always in front. No shit. It breaks with any probability theory. Why run a marathon while others drive it on motorbikes? So, but if you ask the leaders, it's all the opposite. I mean, they don't have anything to do with it, but it's computers and algorithms, they did make no mistakes. So if there are mistakes, it's human. Only humans can make mistakes. Well, I mean, this gives a lot of problem. I don't want to kind of get much more further into it, but I mean, you can see that as the computer turns, or the algorithms turns into a kind of a player in this, where as the worker says, if a truck breaks down, they call immediately to the mechanic to fix it. But if you break down, you get fired, and then you can sit home even without even being able to lift your grandkids. So there's actually a discrimination going on between machines and workers, according to him. But there's also in between the workers, and that's what also interests me. What kind of community do they make when they don't really have leaders kind of or cohesion between the workers. I mean, they speak with a computer. You don't really speak with your peers. It's for instance, lunch break and all this. They just they make it less and less. So now there's basically just time to eat. In extreme cases, I've seen that in Mexico. There, you only have fixed times to go to the toilet. Anyhow, you get this split between migrant groups. Kind of the worst job, that's here. That's where you basically stand up the whole day and you lift like 10 tons and you just make pallets. There's just nothing really to think about. And now we can see the names, but they are generally from Africa, Asia, or Middle East. Those who have the easiest job are generally, well, at this place, they're from Eastern Europe. They're known as hardworking non-unions. They're normally not members of new unions. It's basically a Polish group that kind of makes up this group. And then we have the Danes. I'm among them. It's kind of the next hardest job, but not the hardest. It's basically a bad work culture. They're usually in unions. They're not really considered something that they like at these companies, but they can't get rid of them that easy. So some of them stay, but there will be less and less of them. But if you ask the Polish, they will say, they will go back to Poland. They'll always go back to it. Not always, actually. They're kind of investing in Poland. They're building houses in Poland. They say the Danish will never allow them to get further than they are. Also, the language thing. Many of them says this stops them. If you ask those from Africa, they are really mad at the Polish. They're kind of sandwich in this. The Danes, I mean, I have the wrong nationality. I formed, but the leaders don't like it because they only want Polish people. I mean, so his problem is that he's Danish. Or this is something that happens when I was there this fall. I mean, there I was not working. I mean, I worked before this, but I was just visiting and asking all the people I knew. But there came a lot of Ukrainians, and they were there supported by the town hall because it's a program to get into Ukrainians integrated. And then a Middle Eastern worker said, well, I mean, then I'm fucked because now they are actually half paid. The company will only want Ukrainians in the future. Okay. Shit. Well, this is the part of social relationship. I found something interesting. I haven't really made the analysis yet, but it's quite obvious for me. This is kind of representative for the Africans and the Eastern Europeans. This is the distance between the middle is here, that would be like 3 kilometers. This is like 3,000, and this is like 30 kilometers. So the further away these are, the further out of the circles, the further away they live. And this is the same with, this is Africa, this is Eastern Europe. And this is the closeness they feel, the closest of the people they have. So, I mean, that's a basically in network canvas. The big difference is that the Eastern Europeans seems to be much more related to their home countries, while the Africans actually normally marry a Dane or somebody living in Denmark. They usually have to go to language schools and all this, so they get a friendship there. They usually don't mix with the colleagues, while the Eastern Europeans have some relationship with the colleagues at work. So there are huge differences. And anyhow, there's also individual huge differences. I've met so many different people. You think it's a lie. And here there's something about gender. Generally, the Eastern European women, they don't want to go back to Eastern Europe. They like it in Denmark. There is a gender positive policy at the company. It's one of these ideal kind of firms. They also have a environment policy of not using much plastic and things. So it has the good reputation, but not necessarily in working conditions. Barcelona, I've tried to do that. I should have done this first. Anyhow, I have more material in Denmark because Barcelona has been quite difficult. I came here 3 months before my contract started, and I wanted just to try how is it to come to Barcelona and to look for work. And I was at the same time kind of idealized at the floor in the place where I worked before I came here in Denmark. They thought this is really exciting. There's somebody moved the other way. Why does he do that? And maybe he can help us finding a way to do things here. I came here and I found out that even though I was a European, it took me 40 days just to get the information. I mean, the NIE, the Número de Seguridad Social. I also had to get a bank account in Spain, and there was lots of difficulties. So it took me actually 40 days, even though I was quite proactive, to get allowed to install myself in one of these platforms where you can find job. I mean, because that's another thing. I knocked on so many doors and none of them opened. I mean, you can only ask through the internet platforms. So coming here without nothing was really hard. And I didn't find that job I wanted before I started here. So that kind of went down the drain. But I did at the same time, it's a meteorological thing. I made a blog, and the workers in Denmark followed me on that blog. So here you can see that it's the first day, the second day, the third day. The second day, I try to call immigration extranjería here. And they tell you, well, sorry, we don't answer the phone now, but soon we will let out some new appointments. 3 days after, I got tired of calling the whole day, and I just paid €100 for somebody to do it. And I've been told since they actually hack the program and then sell it. So it's not because the police basically is corrupt in Spain, but they let other people kind of hack the program and get all the appointments and sell them. And that makes the job easier for them. Anyhow, this is what some migrants told me. I don't know if it's true. Anyhow, they followed my life here and came with a lot of suggestions. Also, when I got sick, when I finally got my knee, when I started put up my profile on Adecco, and also Randstad and InfoJobs and all these to get jobs in these places. They helped me with contacts. So I kind of got this migrant experience somehow, anyhow. I mean, a Bulgarian helped me to get in contact with the warehouse here that do the job. They outsource it to another warehouse that was actually, now I give names, it's DSV. It's a huge international warehouse, also Danish operation, but I think it's the third biggest in the world. So I went there. The problem was that exactly in this moment, they raised a court thing against this warehouse for not fulfilling with the job. So of course they were not interested in hiring me if I was told from the warehouse that's now actually wanting 100 million euro from them. And they also lost it. So they moved it to another warehouse here, and that took a year. So in all that time, I just had not the opportunity because I wanted specifically to work with those people who worked in that warehouse. Then I gave up on it. I had a heart blood clot, and I got into classes and whatsoever. But luckily, they changed to another place. Anyhow, to finish this, the whole recruitment process is also algorithms. That's actually written a lot about it, but I did it through. Here I'm actually in a job interview, but that's the third time I'm in a job interview with just one job. So it's not easy to get even the most lousy job. Even if you want to clean in the place, if you do it the wrong way, it's not really easy. But here they put 12 of us. We can't even see who's interviewing us. They just tell us to answer. I mean, what would you do if you stand there and this happens, or what is not right in this picture? And then we can hear the answer of the others, and it turns more and more difficult. Another one is actually where you sit and you have to put your head straight in front of in a certain angle, and they actually record, I mean, your face expressions and they ask you questions and you have to answer. So they do, and this is IA, that's artificial intelligence, and they kind of, the first selection is done by a computer. These recruitment bureaus here called ETT, they're really huge. They're usually of German or French or Swiss origin. You don't know who you speak to. I actually spoken with some who are in these recruitment bureaus, but in other ones. It's part of, you can say, my ethnography now. But anyhow, you get this into the invisibility, just as you do when you work in the warehouse. So it's not only when you work in the warehouse, it's also when you're here. I also ask people, at least those in Denmark as far, how much time they use on internet, if that's where they make their social relationships, because I have this kind of hypothesis that the internet turns into their social relationship. That's why they continue more with the place where they come from. I can't say I have anything clear from the result yet, but anyway, it's going. They do psychological tests. I found it quite interesting that that's actually done in collaboration with the University of Barcelona, one of these entities. So that you can see where academics also gets into all this recruitment circus. And here you can see how good I am because I know how to answer. And that's also what happens. I mean, I wonder why they do all this, because you know how to answer. I mean, you don't say you're disorderly, that you can't meet in the morning. That, I mean, it's quite obvious. Anyhow, here you see the profiles and I had probably 100 applications out at a certain time. So, like if you're interested, €8 an hour, and you work night, weekends, and usually you get like 20. They actually ask you just to work half time, but you work full time, and that's another thing. It's a way to basically avoid to pay a full payment to Seguridad Social. It's a kind of innovation of, and even the big companies do it. This is the company here, and now my big problem is to get into it, because as you can see, it's closed. There's gates everywhere. It's not like I just can knock the door and ask the people, because the guard there, he will just chase me away. So I'm now doing a traditional kind of fieldwork in Madrid, where I expect, like, but I mean, people have told me that between 10 or 15, maybe 20 people who work in this warehouse in Chile would live here. And now I know they only work for this Randstad. So I basically, first I was asking, do you work in Dasha and Shalita? And nobody really knew what I was speaking about, because everybody actually works for ETG. This is GI Group, is another one. But in this plant, they work for Randstad. So now I know how to ask for that. So you make a lot of mistakes getting closer and closer. I go to mosques, churches, syndicates, bars, cafeterias, cut my hair with the hairdressers there, sit on benches, go to cultural houses, public employment offices. And I mean, it's basically getting the hard way. I would have loved just to work there and get the contacts and then ask them if they want to be, but that was not possible. And that's something about university policy. You can't have two jobs. So I'm applying to that, but my work got a bit more Just to finish off. But what do I really want? Because I just heard here Eduardo, he was part of a big plan and had really good objectives. I can't say I want more than to write a good book. That was why I came here. That Jose knows it. I have this love for ethnography. I want simply people to know a bit more about these people working in these conditions, and not necessarily with a focus on the company, but more on them. But said that, there's also going it's a new field of a lot of work. There's a lot of migration. It draws usually, things are happening with algorithms. I think there's a lot actually to be aware of. It's the future for many people. This, even for academics, doesn't find a job. Many ends up in this, especially from the global south, because they can't merit their titles with here. They come here, they want a better life, and they basically find it. It's not always, in Denmark at least, many spoke also positively about it. Those stories are also one. They don't want to go back to where they come from. They find it somehow an easy work, even though the pressure, physically, they're usually young, so it's not as hard on them. And others take it as an experience. Well, that's what I have for now. I hope I have a lot more in a few months, because I'm still kind of digging into it. It's also a bit hard to resume it, and now I passed the time quite a bit, I guess. So, any questions, you're really, really welcome. I still have a problem with the, it's used all the literature done on migration. And I'm kind of a bit lost. The algorithm management, I think that's pretty clear. That can become a book, not a book, an article at least. But what do I do with these migrants? I follow them. I think the new thing is I follow them straight according to one company. So I try to follow the routes of those migrants. Can't say, I think the free books, I think all three of these ways, to follow the money, to follow the product, and to follow the labor, I think they all kind of can expose something about the lives or life stories that I'm going to have. I already have many. I haven't entered into those, but they are quite interesting. Actually, they're amazing. It's just, I thought I had seen much working with hardcore criminals in Mexico, and when I speak with these people who have sailed over the Mediterranean to get up to there, or been stoning the wife of their best friends, because the Taliban told them to do it, or being in the Romanian Revolution where they attacked the radio tower there. And there's so many stories coming up all the time when you get close to these people. So I don't really need to travel all around the world as I've done until now. I can just ask people working in these warehouses.